Hello. So this is our first podcast uh, on the unlikely twins. Um, how are you, Roscoe?
I'm not too bad, Ryan. Yeah, doing well.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
Today we're going to be talking about Katt Williams, who's been getting a fair bit of screen time on the internet at the moment. He was on Club Shay Shay and yeah, just kind of knocked it out of the park. As people kind of ducking for cover a little bit. It's um, it's quite interesting. A bit of time for Katt Williams. He is funny. He's a very funny bugger.
So were
He's
you like, did you ever watch Club Shay Shay before?
No, no,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't.
Club Shay Shay is run by the great Shannon Sharpe, an ex-NFL player.
Hmm.
And I have been following his career on ESPN as a presenter, as an expert, in the expert panels where
Yep.
he talks about NFL, talks about basketball. And I've been following him for, I would say maybe 4 years, 3, 4 years I've been following him.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so he's well, the club Shay Shay, he's been doing it for about a couple of years now. But
Hmm.
before that, he was only on ESPN as a presenter, and they would talk about yesterday's sports, and all that. He would talk about basketball. He would talk about NFL, which is something he still does as well as a
Mm.
day job. So Club Shay Shay is like a pet project of his, and Shannon Sharpe is such an interesting character in within himself.
Hmm.
If you ever get a chance to see some of his previous work, where he was on FS1 with another, I guess, very decorated reporter in Skip Bayless. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but him
That
and
name.
Shannon Sharpe worked together for many years. You could even say he was discovered. Shannon Sharpe was discovered by Skip Bayless in the report in the sort of TV presenter
Hmm.
space. And as soon as Shannon got on TV, he is probably the only person you will see on TV who has very strong Southern American roots,
Hmm.
and he uh, doesn't shy away from it at all, and he's made that his strength. There is
Hmm.
literally nobody else, none of no other broadcaster who has got, I guess, the kind of charisma that he has. And so he's extremely entertaining. He spent most of his life with his grandparents who raised him, and he remembers the stories they have told him verbatim to verbatim, and he very he relates them to current events and current sporting events beautifully. He's just a very entertaining character, and he's got a remarkable story about him as well. So back when he was a player, he had this club Shay Shay thing even back then as a player. So after the games, he would have he would have like his favorite drinks in club Shay Shay, and the players would come in, and everyone knew it was going to be a good time with Shannon and his club Shay Shay. So when he became a presenter, and we were in the internet world and podcast world and all that, he brought that as a podcast, and he's just so entertaining that all of his interviews are just amazing. He asks very good questions. He's very disciplined, but he's just a very funny guy to watch and listen. He's very animated. Uh, you go to you love your gifs. He's got a plethora of gifs made about him because of the way
Right.
he reacts, the way he talks, what he'll wear, and stuff like that. So the fact that he had Katt Williams on there,
Mm.
Katt Williams took on the entire sort of
He took no prisoners.
interview, and the entire, like, no one was focusing on Shannon Sharpe. And look, that's credit to Shannon Sharpe as well, that he shown all the light to Katt Williams. But I just wanted to give you a bit of a background Shannon Sharpe on how big a celebrity he is on his own.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So
So
yeah, so Katt Williams, man, that was like he started off the interview straight away. Like I think the within the first less than a minute, he was already on his mission that he was on of truth seeking.
yeah, absolutely. The thing that I found very interesting about Katt Williams is that I've only seen him on a comedy perspective, being
Yeah.
just hilarious, and very, very quick, very witty humor. And so that's how I've known Katt Williams. Always had a bit of time for him because of that, a funny comedian is a funny comedian, um, and to be consistently funny too. He just lands. But what I hadn't ever seen was this side of him, and I thought it was really, really interesting. The calling out people, not playing a role, not being a character, but just saying, "This is straight up. This is my opinion on this in the industry," and it sounded very, very genuine. There was nothing. Um, there didn't sound anything slimy about it. There didn't seem like he was, being, unfair. Um, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who don't like what he said, but he didn't sound like he was being dishonest. I think what he was saying was what he felt and what he believed.
Yeah, and I think he's obviously I don't believe Shannon Sharpe expected,
No.
because obviously before you have a guest on, my assumption is that Shannon would have had a chat with him that, hey, I would like you to be on. We've had people on as guests before you who you have worked with.
Hmm.
So I don't think Shannon had any inclination of how this was going to go. He thought, like, because this is not the first time that Katt Williams has said something about some of the people. Like he has
No.
spoken on um, Kevin Hart
Yeah.
before. He
Quite a
has
lot.
said, yeah, yeah. So this was not the first time he chimed in about Kevin Hart.
No.
He's mentioned that before. So I'm guessing Shannon Sharpe, being aware of, is very knowledgeable on his guests, he would know that there is a previous, thing between those two. So he would have expected that some of that will come out again, because Shannon's style of interviewing would mean that I'm sure he had a question about that. But all the other people that he spoke of earlier, that would have definitely, I think that really took him by surprise, because some of the people that Katt Williams went after, for example, Steve Harvey, I think Shannon Sharpe is a big fan of Steve Harvey, and I think so am I.
Mm.
I like Steve Harvey.
Mm.
I've never had anything, like I wouldn't say he's my most favorite stand-up comic, but he definitely has a presence about him,
Oh
and
yeah.
definitely a very funny guy. And there are a lot of people who impersonate Steve Harvey, and even that is so hilarious. And yeah, and it was, yeah, it was. I was like, whoa, this is. He's going on a ride straight away. There's no.
He's going after a lot of sacred cows.
But yeah, it just. I mean, some of his stories don't quite make sense to me. So some of his stories don't make a lot of sense to me. In particular, the story about him reading 3,000 books a year, fiction, non-fiction, at the age of 9 or 10. That doesn't quite make sense to me. That's
That's a lot of books. That's like 10 a day.
that's exaggerated. I
Yeah,
feel
eight a
that's,
day.
yeah, that I feel that's very exaggerated.
Mm,
As an 8 or 9 year old, I mean, as an adult, I believe that is exaggerated.
mm,
But as a child, that just, seems like, and even if you're reading kids' books, I don't think you would get through 3,000 kids' books in a year. That's a lot of kids' books, and he's talking non-fiction. So he's talking. There was another podcast I was watching today where he didn't say 3,000 books, but he said he read a lot of autobiographies, and all that. I don't doubt I don't doubt that he's an avid reader. I'm not saying he's not capable of reading a lot of books, but 3,000 books a year as a child, that is, you would have to be like a child prodigy
mm,
to be doing something like that. When you see those 3-year-old, 4-year-old playing pianos,
hmm.
the
Like a savant.
like a savant, like a maestro,
Mm,
and you're going, that's a prodigy.
mm,
And yeah, look, he's a great stand-up comedian, but again, he's not, on my Mount Rushmore of stand-up comedians of all time, even in the African American community. I
mm,
wouldn't put him as my top three, um, you know, comedians of all time. And I expect the prodigy to be something I've never seen before.
mm,
And he doesn't come across to me as a prodigy. He's very funny.
mm.
He's very funny, but I never thought of him as a prodigy. And
No.
reading 3,000 books a year as an 8 or 9 year old, or even a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old, that doesn't sound like, it doesn't match up like, his performances. And like, I wasn't blown away to an extent thinking, oh, this guy is extremely well read. I never got that impression. And you get that impression with some people, like, when you're talking to someone, they're well read.
Like
And,
your good self.
oh, thank you so much. And I would say present company included.
Yes.
Whereas with him, you don't get that impression.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my point of view. I'm not in the African American community, so maybe I am, uh, you know, um, possibly wrong. But then again, we've all heard, Martin Luther King, great speaker,
Mm.
Malcolm X, great speakers.
Barack
Uh,
Obama.
Barack Obama, exactly. A great
Excellent
speaker.
orator.
Yeah, there's lots of reverends who
Mm,
who are great speakers. I would say even the controversial Minister Farrakhan, he is a great
hmm.
speaker. Like, what I mean? These
Yeah.
are all people who are great speakers. And even if, and, you associate 3,000 books a day with someone like them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like if say Obama said, look, I've read 3,000 books as a 11, 12-year-old, you wouldn't doubt him so much.
Mm.
You think,
I,
yeah, that
I
makes
still
sense.
think, I mean, I think he might have just got his math wrong because you're right. I can't see anyone doing 8 books a day. I mean, I couldn't see me doing 8 books a day. I'll read a book in a night. That's no worries. But it'd be hard pressed reading two. And I'm not a slow reader, but there's a lot of pages in a book. There's a lot of information to get through. Um, I think that was possibly misspoken, but I was very interested about some of the things he was saying. I do think, and from what I've heard, even from Joe Rogan, um, it seems to me that the comedy scene um, in America is a desperate scramble. You get these people who, and God bless them, they go into these into these environments. They have to, do the waiting thing. They've got their little hard worked on script of paper that they've studied up and studied up and studied up on, and now they're up on thing, like for rehearsing for a play. You know, they're going up to do their little bit. Um, they can bomb. Maybe what seemed really funny in their own head doesn't translate in real life. Um, you know, and perhaps all their funny staging and faces and everything doesn't work. And maybe sometimes it does, and with other groups it doesn't. And they're trying to just get to the stage where they've risen enough in everyone's estimation, they can do a comedy special and start earning big bucks. And you know, all the bigger players have done it. But I think that the type of people who would go through that grinder, you know, and they probably start very, very young, you know, like their early 20s. And I would imagine many of them are just burn out, or just realize after a period of time that the stress is too high, that they can't handle the pace, that they can't handle that living on, you know, a few bucks here and a few bucks there, you know, having hit so many up just to, you know, put a roof over their house, and doing it really tough in the initial thing. And people like Katt Williams, people like Joe Rogan, people like, you know, I'm sure Chris Rock. Now, I don't think a lot of them really came out of, you know, big money or anything like that. Now, unlike a lot of the Hollywood people, a lot of them are from very influential families and that kind of thing. But I think a lot of the comedy folk don't come from that basis, and so I think it makes a certain kind of person. And so with Katt Williams and what he was saying about, say, Kevin Hart, I could completely see that, not knowing Kevin Hart, but I could see how someone in that position, not necessarily Kevin Hart and not necessarily with Katt Williams, but how a person could, you know, have been put in a position like Kevin Hart. And if you're put in that position and kind of boosted as to, you know, the knock-on effects, and who could kind of sink their hooks into you, you know, in pulling you up the ladder a bit. Now he says himself that he hasn't been. That Katt says that he hasn't been, and he's had to, you know, grind it all through himself. That could well be true too. We won't know the full story. We won't know 100%, you know, the facts of it, but it it's very much that you know, the type of person who going through the comedy grinder, um, suddenly given extra attention, extra an extra marketing, extra boost, and have a few things pass their way. And the kind of person who they would want would be a yes man, someone who would go, you know, yes, I'll do that. You know, that they might believe themselves perhaps not funny enough and very lucky to have made it, you know. And if someone who they see, you know, perhaps is a bit of a jerk who didn't take up the opportunities or push back a little bit too hard or did whatever, you know, they quite happily, you know, jump into his grave. You know, I think that was kind of the inference that I got. And so when he said it, it wasn't that I had any any particular doubt. It didn't seem far fetched. It seemed like the kind of thing that could happen, and could easily happen in that kind of environment. And the kind of, you know, jealousy that he was saying that Bernie and Steve had to each other. Again, I don't know whether that's true, but it's the kind of thing that wouldn't surprise me, you know. Um, and certainly a lot of the kind of personalities, if you've got the kind of confidence to jump up on stage with, you know, and do a 15 minute set in front of a whole stage of people and risk bombing and being laughed out of the club, you know, or not laughed out, but booed out of the club rather. Um, that kind of confidence and that kind of will, and that kind of ego, I guess, is a big one. It would be both big to be able to do that, and also fragile in terms of, you could get really knocked down. If things, you would invest a lot in your ability to make comedy, and so a lot of what he said kind of rang true. It sounded like something that could happen. It sounded like something that, if you replace the names with, other people that, we wouldn't perhaps know, it would make a lot of sense. In terms of Katt I wouldn't say he'd be my top three either. I think probably Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and maybe Dave Chappelle be my three top. And he wouldn't be, but I don't think he's far off. I think he's a very funny man. I think his comedy is very, very good. And like all of those guys, that they're very quick-witted. Their jokes always tend to land, and his is similar in that respect. And we saw that with his interview with Wanda Smith. It was just phenomenal. But yeah, there could also be the fact that what he's saying is complete lies, or fabrications or exaggerations is probably even more the point. It could be that. He could also be casting himself in absolutely the best light for someone else to be cast in the worst light. Everyone wants to be the hero of their stories, and he seemed to be the virtuous saint in a lot of what he was saying on that interview and with Shannon. He was the saint, and they were all the bad guys, or they were all, he was a little bit beyond reproach, which I think does cast a little bit of a shadow. But
no, you're spot on. I think you've hit the nail. The fact that he had nothing negative to say about himself,
yeah,
or any mistakes that he has made. He seems to come across as a person who's on the righteous path,
mm-hmm.
can do no wrong. God is
Yep.
always on his side, and and like no one is without, I guess some kind of issue in their life and whatnot. He was speaking about his issues with his father and how
Mm-hmm.
he had to move out. There's a lot of mixing of words that I find that he chooses his words very carefully.
He does. Yeah.
And when when I saw Shannon question him or ask him to elaborate, he has another set of words he can use so that he doesn't have to divulge the full details. And that's a lot of skill. That's a great skill to have. I wish I had that skill.
Mm.
That's a great skill to have. But I've noticed he does a bit of that, yeah, he doesn't like to go into a subject where he's gonna have to come across as not the savior of the situation and whatnot. For instance, I'm not sure if you remember, this was a few years ago, where he got into an altercation with what seemed to be a 15
Yeah.
year old.
Yeah.
I still don't understand what happened there, and
No.
I don't believe I've seen an interview where he has clearly articulated what actually happened.
No.
What I understood to have happened is that he was competing with a 14, 15-year-old in some athletic uh,
Endeavour
competition,
basketball or something like
or
that.
in some some sort of competition where athletic prowess was needed, and he
Mm-hmm.
came short,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, because he's a 50-plus-year-old man.
Yeah.
And at the time, it would have been in his late 40s, I think, if not already in his early 50s. And that kid was 16 and 17-year-old. So, and so I'm not sure what happened on that occasion, and it's just that his ego got the better of him on that occasion. I'm not
Hmm.
sure, but I haven't heard an actual interview on what actually happened there. And I
No,
think Shannon Sharpe went there, and I wish he had.
yeah, I mean, it is a bit. Uh, would have been a bit of a sore point. It's and yeah, I wonder how he would have tap danced around that. I'm sure he would have,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
no doubt. But
yeah.
it would have been interesting, just for curiosity's sake, just to see how he handled that, and how he tap
Because it was
dances.
recorded on someone's phone.
Yeah, and
It was not one of his best moments.
no, and I mean, Cat, you see him up on stage, and is very limber and all that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. Great, but he's not a big bloke.
No, no,
Has
no.
he got a,
I think he's no more than 5'4" or 5'5" at best. So yeah, he's by no means a big man. Um, and
you could you
yeah,
could
like
probably pick him up and bench press him, bro.
yeah. But I mean, look, I'm never to judge a person by their size. Uh,
No.
you just never know what a person knows and what a person is about on the inside. You just never know.
Mm.
They may have the fight of a lion, and you'll be you'll be surprised.
Oh, absolutely.
However, like yeah, like I guess it's just that he seems to have done nothing wrong. Another story has come up recently, and I was watching a podcast just earlier today where he was interviewed where he was on a podcast with someone else because everyone wants Katt Williams at the moment. Um, and there was so this interviewer, his name is Willie D, and he asked Katt Williams about an issue of his with another stand-up comedian by the name of Ali Siddiq. Um, I don't know if you remember, I've played Ali Siddiq's comedy special for you on my in the car once. This is a few
Mm.
years ago. I'm not sure if you remember. We were driving together, and
Mm.
I was playing Ali Siddiq's uh, some audio stand-up that he had created an audio album. Do you remember?
Probably not. No,
No.
but I
Uh,
would probably remember if I heard it again.
yeah, so he's another comedian from the South. And
Mhm.
he's had a very adventurous history. He has done some time in jail, and he has his comedic style is storytelling. So he will tell you an entire story, and just the way he goes about it and facial expressions, he's brilliant. Very very funny guy. One of my favorite comedians. So apparently he has again. I do not know about this. I only know it through the podcast that I just saw. Apparently, he was meant to open for Katt Williams when Katt Williams was touring his hometown of Houston. So,
Gotcha. Yep.
Ali Sadiq came up to the venue, but um, Katt Williams's bodyguards were not letting him in, and he kept saying, I'm meant to be in the show,"
Mm.
and they just wouldn't let him in. And then he was given a check by one of the security guards. Um, and so that was the end of that. And Ali Sadiq must have included this bit in one of his stand-up specials.
Uh-huh.
That I was blah 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 blah. So people started hitting up Katt Williams to say, "Hey, is that true? If it
Why would you
is,
do that? Yeah.
why didn't you do it?" So Willie D, the podcast that he was on, I was watching a little earlier, he asked him that question. What, is there any
Mm.
truth to your issue with Ali Sadiq? And he said, that's one of the things and this is what Katt Williams said. This is one of the things that really annoys me because this never happened to me. And so he explained that I wasn't there at the venue when my security guards kicked him out. I wasn't there. This happened before I arrived. That's number one. Number two, I don't go to a city and then decide, okay, who's my opening ad going to be? We only have a limited amount of time, and these are all things which are pre-planned. And he said, if this was pre-planned, why would I not have him in? But this was not pre-planned, and I did not even know him at the time. He was not the Ali Sadiq that we know now. He's become fairly big in the last few years. And he said I didn't know him from a bar of soap. And why would I do something like that? So it seems to be that he had a misunderstanding that he was meant to be opening. And he said, like, we had all the advertisements, all the cutouts, paper cutouts. His name wasn't there. His photo wasn't there. So I don't know how he was expecting to open up just because he has done this venue before, being a local. He knows the people who run the venue because he's a local. But that doesn't mean that you're going to open for me, just because
Yeah.
you are a person of, you're a bit of a celebrity in your town, and but then uh, Willie D did ask him, then why did you pay him? Why did you give him a check? And I didn't quite understand his response. Maybe I missed it, and maybe I need to go back and have a look at it. But it seems like he said, "Oh, he was here. He was causing a lot of issue, so we had decided to give him some money, so that he'll leave us
Piss
alone."
him off. Yeah.
But who does that?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like who does that? Like, don't they just call the police? Can you get this
Yeah.
guy out of here? He's not part of our thing. Like, why would you, like, who does that? Like, just because you've rocked up and there's security guards, they're not worried about you. You're by yourself.
No.
You've got like 10 security guards. Why would they pay you? They'll just call the police and get you out of here. But,
Or
but
give him a bit of this.
yeah, well, that could come and bite him. They can always call the police because the police will be
Yeah, absolutely.
the police will be already aware there's a concert happening. Trouble can happen, so I'm sure they would have already been around there anyway. So they would have whipped him
Yeah.
out there. So the fact that they paid him and he's admitting to paying him, but the story on why they paid him makes no sense at all. Yeah, so I'm leaning more towards Ali Siddiq. Something may have happened, and yeah, they've just covered up in a strange way.
Or it could be that the actual problem was with the people who, like the venue, who actually set it up. They could have found that there had been miscommunication. So while the
Could be.
security guards are kind of saying, you're not part of that, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
word
No,
comes in,
quite
oh
possibly.
yeah,
Quite possibly, yeah.
he's not actually in here, but we kind of done this, but we've actually fully booked, and we've double booked, and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. There could have been a
Someone
little bit of that.
forgot to send that email.
Yes.
Someone's
Sorry
email
about
got
that.
stuck in the draft. But
Yeah, your picture's not on there. You're not part of the promotional
yeah,
brochures
I
and
think
everything.
yeah, it could be something like that. It could be a misunderstanding with the venue. So Cat Williams may have no idea about the whole thing, and this could be a screw up by the venue altogether. Most likely. But it makes for a much interesting story if you say, "Oh, Cat Williams didn't want, young and upcoming comic Ali Siddiq." For whatever reason, we should find out, and I think the media ran with that story, and that kind of became the story in Ali's mind as well, obviously.
But I think too that the up and coming talent
Yeah,
is possibly screwed around a lot more when it comes to being paid, when it comes to the amount of pay, where they have to go, what sets. have to do, who they have to go
I would
after,
say
and all of that kind of thing.
yes and no. The reason why I would say no is because this is an established comedian, and I would agree with him that before they are going to their tour dates, they already
Mm,
know who they've signed up for that town, or the comedian's
mm,
people would know this is the person who's opening for you here, this is the person that's opening for you there. And I would imagine
yep.
they would have booked that in advance for sure.
Mm,
So yeah, so unless you are like there's a comedy club and you're an up and coming comedian, I can see where you just rock up earlier in the day and say, hey, can I have a slot this evening? And they may say
mm,
yes, but some big name might also want to do might also want to might want to try some material of theirs, so the up and comer will get pushed out. But I would imagine in a concert situation, which is what this is, he was doing concert, or I guess comedy specials all over the US or southern part of US, that I would imagine they'll have their opening acts booked in advance, so to speak. But yeah, like it is a bit strange. Some of
it
the
is strange.
some of his stories don't add up, and we are in some ways making excuses for Katt Williams here.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think we
I think too, it's the fact. I mean, the fact that he does um, absolve himself of any kind of issues that
Yeah,
come up, and he always has a very good answer as to what's going on. It doesn't mean that he's not right. Having a good answer can mean that you've got every right to have a good answer, because
yeah,
you have been on the right side of angels. But at the same time, it makes you suspicious if there's no amount of being humble, or kind of saying, "Look, you're right. I didn't handle that great, but that was a long time ago, or I could have handled this a little bit differently or a little bit better, but the information I had at the time meant that I made this choice. Probably wasn't the best choice, but I made it anyhow. And this is how it kind of all went up." People become a lot more forgiving about that kind of thing, in
true,
my
true,
estimation. They don't tend to nail someone to a wall over it. But when you've constantly got an excuse, it's never your fault. You're always very, very righteously, um, very righteous in your actions, and also righteously indignant when anything bad happens against you. Because you are so pure, and so your motives were always so good. You know, there is something to suspect of people who do that, and Kat does that.
yeah. And look, there have been comedians who have also come up in the last few days since the Club Shay Shay episode, and they have said, look, there is a very generous side to him.
Mm,
I was watching. There's this rapper. Um, his name is Boozy, and have you heard of Vlad TV?
yes,
You
yes, I
have,
have.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he interviews a lot of rappers, and one of the rappers he interviews quite often is this guy named Boozy.
Hmm.
And when Boozy was coming up in the business, he happened to know Katt Williams through some other contact, and they must have met up. And Katt Williams, I think, was a bit of a fan of some of his very initial early work. So after one of his shows, Katt Williams gave him something which was wrapped in towels, like a hand towel or something. Gave him, something. And Boozy thought, oh, maybe it was just some kind of marijuana or something to
Hmm.
smoke later. So later on, when he unwrapped the towel, it was $15,000 to get some recording time at a studio. And he said, I'm forever grateful that he gave me that money, because I needed that money in order to get some, and that helped him. It was like a bit of a stepping stone. Um, and there's lots of stories like that about his generosity. There's another comedian, I can't remember his name, but he was a writer for Conan O'Brien back in the day,
Mm.
and he himself now is a stand-up comedian. He's a funny stand-up comedian, and he was also saying like people don't ask him enough questions about, how much money has he donated, because he's a very, very generous man, and he
Mm.
does it very quietly as well. He doesn't, do a lot of do a big hoo-ha. So that's another thing about him that I don't believe it's a lie, because a lot, there are people vouching for his generosity,
Mhm.
about his generosity. So, um, you know, I guess that part may not be too inaccurate, because he did himself allude to that in the Shannon Sharpe Club Shay Shay
Well,
interview.
he certainly was very generous with Kevin Hart. Heaped a lot of
Yeah, I
a
was just
lot of
gonna
stuff on
touch
him,
Kevin Hart next. Um,
a lot of gifts.
yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't quite understand his issue with Kevin Hart. Okay. Um,
I think I know.
I mean, yes, obviously is jealousy. Is that what you think? What you're thinking?
No.
Okay,
Um,
you go first.
the he was up and coming and was kind of getting offered slots and also very much in the movies and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and Kevin Hart, whilst he was a little bit, from the sounds of things, from what I've heard, at least from others, rather than so much from his own mouth, he wasn't uh, very compliant. When they said, okay, well, in this comedy thing, we want you to do this. No, well, can you make sure you're here at this time? No, so he's not quite as compliant, at least as my understanding is. And so the person that they ended up putting forth to the projects that were coming up wasn't Katt Williams, who was certainly talented enough to do it, and certainly talented enough to take it further.
Well, he's done 60 movies.
Yeah, but he
I
just
didn't know
what?
that.
Mm, but
60
he
movies
just
is a lot of
wasn't.
movies.
It is, but he just wasn't compliant, and so the good movies or the good slots or the things that were going to get more visuals on him were kind of handed to Kevin Hart, who was very compliant and who Kat sees as a yes man. And again, I reckon that's possibly right. I don't actually personally think that Kevin Hart is very funny at all. A lot of people really like him. I mean, I don't, I don't find him painful to listen to, but I don't find him funny. Um, as far as acting too, I think he's okay. It's kind of, I don't actually, similar to Chris Tucker. I never found Chris Tucker funny either. I find, and I can see how people would, and what have you. I just never found Kevin Hart funny. I always found Katt Williams funny,
Mm.
but I think what they did is they were looking for someone who was prepared to do whatever he was asked to do, had a little bit of comedy background, was happy to take up the mantle and run with it, and in return they would boost him, and he would be, part of the clique, and so it was done. I think I mean, this is a totally different situation, but I think that MMA fighter turned comedy guy was boosted by Joe Rogan, um, uh, Brendan Schwab or whatever his
Shannon
name
Sharpe,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, so he was boosted by Joe Rogan. Not funny at all. The guy's a complete, you know, he's the absolute antithesis of
You're
funny.
bad when Joe
But
Rogan can't save you.
yeah, but he got boosted up, did a comedy special, all of that kind of thing. Something that people would normally spend ages in trying to get to that stage, and yet he got it, and all that kind of thing got a lot of you know a lot of attention and that kind of thing. Not funny at all, but he got boosted, and I think that's what they're saying happened with Kevin Hart on a bigger scale, and could have been Katt Williams. So Katt Williams would be jealous in that respect.
Well,
He would
well,
be very
yeah.
happy.
So the claims that he made. So I'll share my experience. When I first heard Kevin Hart, I felt he was very funny, and I'm talking back in the first time I started watching his stand-up comedy was, I believe, either in 2011, around 2011, 2012 is when I first started listening to some of his earlier work, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which was around, I think, his comedy specials from 2008 or 9. I found him very funny, I'll admit. I found him very funny back then. His routines were very funny. I always found him funny in movies. How he would always play a self-deprecating
Deprecating.
sort of, yeah,
Mm.
like always, he would allow other people to make fun of him, the way he would react, about people making jokes about his height and
Mm.
all that. I always thought he did it very well. I always kind of found him funny in that way, his style of talking. And so one of the claims that Katt Williams made was that he's never sold out a concert, which is incorrect. A lot of people, other celebrities, since that Club Shay Shay interview of Katt Williams, have come out and said, no, because I have been to his comedy, one of his concerts, which was filmed. It was a full concert. I've been there. And this is, I'm not sure if you've heard of he's from the Breakfast Club in America, Shyamalan.
Yeah,
Shyamalan,
the
or
God.
he calls himself.
Yeah.
He said, I've been to a Kevin Hart concert. I was there. I have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It was packed. So that is an incorrect statement as well, from Katt Williams. That is not correct. Kevin
Mm.
Hart has sold out many concerts. Um,
Mm.
and um, and I guess the other thing, you know, which you already alluded to, that Katt Williams did not want to play a homosexual. Katt Williams didn't
Mm.
want to play a woman. These things are quite important to him, and he touched on some of his interview with in Club Shay Shay, where he mentioned he comes from a very religious background in that his father was a pastor. Uh, so I can understand why these things are ingrained in him.
Mm.
And he didn't want to play those roles, and that's his choice. If he doesn't want to do it, that's his
Mm.
choice. But obviously, they are going to go to somebody else.
Absolutely.
They're going to go to the next person who is 5'3" and funny and skinny and small, and there's
Mm.
not many of them around.
No.
It's either you or it's Kevin Hart. I
Yeah.
can't think of anyone else. Can you? Like
No.
there literally isn't anyone.
Oh
Uh,
no.
there's another comedian who I follow, but he's not at that level when it comes to acting, and that's he goes by the name of Little Duval. He's also a very, very funny guy, very funny on social media. And he's a very funny comedian as well, and he's a musician as well. But his acting is not at that level to sort of compete with Kevin Hart and Katt Williams. But
Mm.
yeah, and also he also said that Kevin Hart was a plant. He was planted, in that Kevin Hart is from New York. How did he get a TV show in Los Angeles? How did he, and all that sort of thing? And I guess what they need to understand is that well and maybe true.
Absolutely.
I'm not doubting that, and I think number one, you can't hold that against Kevin Hart.
No.
Okay? Kevin Hart, they saw something in Kevin Hart, and they felt this is the guy who we should be backing next I'm not saying that's the way it should be,
No.
that, people of a certain race are deciding who they're going to pick from a certain race. I don't think
Mm.
that's fair. I understand that, but it's certainly not Kevin Hart's fault that he was picked. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And Kevin and he, in my view, like I said, he's not a. I don't believe there is a single comedian who's for everyone.
No.
Some of Kevin Hart's stuff, even I don't find funny, but
Mm.
some of his earlier stuff, he came to Australia, did a concert here as well. Wasn't too bad. It was okay.
Mm.
His opening acts were better. There was one or two of his opening acts that were better than him. I'll give
Mm-hmm.
you that. But Kevin Hart wasn't too bad. Like I didn't think, oh, what a waste of money. We had good seats. We were like maybe just 2 or 3 rows from the stage, so we had really really good seats, and we didn't feel like he was that bad. He was good. It wasn't great. It
Mm.
wasn't as great as I've seen him before in his younger days, but he's a funny guy, and so if he was chosen by the people who had the controls of the buttons. They chose him. I can see why. I mean, he was funny, and
Yeah.
you know, he's yeah, he's prepared to do the work, and he's disciplined. Yeah, so it makes sense, and you can't hold it against Kevin.
No. Well, the other thing, and it goes back to what I said earlier, is that the powers that be, the people that are greasing the wheels and who hold the power up in the industry.
Yeah,
I mean, if they want someone who's if they've got a choice between Katt Williams and Kevin Hart, let's say that they put Katt Williams as a 7.5 out of 10, but is non-compliant, and Kevin Hart is a 6 out of 10, and Kevin Hart will do anything you want, whenever you want him, be forever grateful, will not question
correct.
it, will do it every day,
Yeah,
100 days,
correct,
100 times out of
correct.
100. I mean that's the reality, and so
That's
in that
exactly
respect,
what
you,
I
you can
believe
call
was
him a
happening.
you can call him a plant, you can
Yeah.
you know shit on him about whatever, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
And you got
at
to
the end
give
of the
credit,
day,
and you got to give
he
credit where it's due as well. Like Kevin Hart
absolutely.
grabbed it with both hands and
Oh
didn't let go.
no.
There have been people in the
And
past who have let go, like Katt Williams.
yeah.
For whatever reasons, yeah, I'm sure he had good enough reasons
Mm.
to knock back roles. I'm not saying that, but you know, to assume that Kevin Hart's, you know, I think it's something he was alluding in the interview that Kevin Hart's probably said yes to some of the things that Katt Williams said no,
Yeah.
which could be even sexual advances, uh,
Oh yeah.
stuff like
Could be.
that he touched on, that he's alluding that Kevin Hart said yes to.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about that, but you can't really be mad at Kevin Hart for having a career that he does have, because I believe he's worked hard for it.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know,
And that's exactly the kind of person that they want. Someone who's a workhorse.
yeah, and
Who's
he's a very good actor. Like Kevin Hart is
mm,
a very good actor. Like he can impersonate a lot of people, and yeah, sure, he may not be as intelligent of a comedian as Katt Williams is, and no one is saying that Kevin Hart is a very intelligent comedian. If anything, Kevin Hart's humor is, that just dumb shit that he does,
mm,
dumb shit that he gets caught up in. That's
yep.
literally what Kevin Hart's, and how his children think he's dumb. Everyone
Mm,
thinks he's dumb. Yeah, he's short, and he's basically made a career out of that. Like, no
oh
way
yeah.
is he even trying to mirror or show that I'm better than Katt Williams. Look at my humor.
Mm,
Yeah, Katt Williams is all about observation of life in general, and he's very witty. Whereas Kevin Hart is just that silly dad doing dumb shit and getting caught out and having issues with his father, with his mother, with his brother, like all that, like with his friend and
Mm.
getting into an argument. Like it's basically that's what his stand-up is, and it's great. It just suits him to a T. And all his movie roles have been the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Never
Kevin Hart playing Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart playing Kevin Hart. You could say he's got no range because he's just playing himself. But yeah, so and the thing is like, there are some people who no one can control. So people
Mm.
like Dave Chappelle,
Hmm.
he's a one of one. Like whether the bigwigs in Hollywood like him or don't like him, and they tried their best to get rid of him. And they succeeded for a better part of 10 years after his show ended. But he's just come back and instantly became the biggest thing.
Mm.
Instantly just came up and he even joked about it once. He went to I think it was Jimmy Fallon's show, and he was the guest over there, and he said, "Oh, I was looking at all the stand-up comedians, and I could just tell their superpowers were getting too strong, so I had to come back." It's like he was looking, he was talking like a Marvel sort of character, observing
Yeah.
some villains
The super villain.
getting stronger and stronger, so I have to come back. And yeah, like there are people like that you just cannot control. They're too blessed,
Hmm.
uh, too intelligent, too don't give a shit attitude. You just cannot stop them. And Dave Chappelle is probably one of those kind of people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
But
But I do, I think that there can be a middle ground. There can be in terms of Katt Williams. I don't know that he is a complete bullshit artist. I mean, he might be. He might be. But I think at the end of the day, if we were to kind of give him the absolute best interpretation of everything, basically follow his lead and say everything you said is 100% spot on, or we go the other way and say you're just a complete bullshit artist, nothing of what you said is at all true. I have a feeling that he's probably, going to be somewhere in between. I think that, as we say with like Kevin Hart, he's if Cat sees him as a plant and someone who's stole his things and unworthy of being where he is with the success that he's had, I don't think that's a fair interpretation.
no,
But I think there's at least some merit to some of what he's said. Under a certain interpretation, maybe he was boosted. Maybe he was brought in and thrown into roles that maybe at the time that he either wasn't qualified for or wasn't ready for.
hmm,
But irrespectively, he took up the mantle. He took it up well enough to, now be a box office hit. Whenever
yeah,
he goes in, worth a lot of money,
yeah,
and a household name everywhere.
yeah,
So you can't hate the. He shouldn't hate the play. He should hate the play.
yeah. Don't hate
And
the
I
hate
think
the game.
Cat hates the player. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
no,
Cat hates
absolutely.
the player. I think Cat should really take a little bit of a look at himself, and also look at the game. It's fair to say, I didn't want to do any of these particular things, and because I was firm in my values, and I was a moral person, I had my own set of morals, and I stuck by my values and morals, and because of that, the
Yeah,
um, the powers that be have stripped me of any any of those opportunities. That's one thing you can say, and probably has got every right to say that. But to say because I didn't get those opportunities, or they weren't given to me, they were given to this guy, and this guy's done really well, and therefore I don't think he's a good person. He's immoral, or is this, or is that, or is the other thing. I think that's completely unfair. He's just responding to the situation that Cat wasn't willing to take up. I do think that if you're not prepared to do things, and you're making a value judgment against doing those things, whatever those things may be, anywhere, you've absolutely every right to do that. But if you're not prepared to do them, someone else will. Um, and probably for less money than what you will do it for,
100%. That's
because
another thing. Yeah.
you're standing on a soapbox. It means something to you. You've invested some kind of ideological value in it. The person who's coming along doesn't care. He'll do it, whatever. You know, it's the same as kind of a vegan shouting at someone eating a hamburger. To the person who doesn't hold their value judgments, what does it matter to them? Do you
Yeah.
want a burger? Oh no, you're this, that, the other. Okay, sir, do you want to have a burger? Yeah, sure. Is it free? No worries.
Yeah.
It's two different things. And I don't think you can hold that person at the same standard as you because they don't have that same moral standpoint, or because they took up the opportunity that you couldn't take up, or whatever. I don't think you're necessarily a bad person for having that moral judgment or whatever, but
Yeah.
you don't complain then if someone else takes up
Yeah.
that mantle.
Or at least don't complain, or at least don't go after Kevin Hart.
Yeah,
Go after the
absolutely.
industry and say, hey, why do you expect, black people to play this role? You know,
Yeah,
that's and
100%.
that seems to be like, why can't you have similar roles to white people or Asians? Why
Mm,
can't we play those roles? And that's a fair argument for him to have.
100%.
But um, yeah, and I guess one of the things which so have you seen the Friday movies?
No,
Okay,
no, I haven't.
yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah, I know which ones you're talking about, but I've never
yeah,
actually seen
because
them.
he was referring to one of the roles in the Friday movie where he plays a pimp um,
Hmm.
who has a clothing store
Hmm.
in one of the I guess suburbs in LA. And the character he was playing was Money Magic or something like that. I can't remember. I'm probably
Hmm.
getting it wrong. And he played that very well. He was very funny,
Mm.
Katt Williams. The way he would talk and all that. He did a very good job. However, there is a scene in the movie where there is this big guy, Terry Crews. He's obviously been in many
Hmm. Yeah, I know
well,
Terry
and
Crews.
that was one of his first movies as well, Terry Crews's. And Terry Crews was playing this convict that has just come out of jail um,
Hmm.
and is a homosexual. And,
Hmm.
he has a certain taste in men.
Hmm.
Katt Williams was that. Uh,
Right.
and he corners Katt Williams at a party in the bathroom. And
Mhm.
the original script was that Terry Crews was gonna have a sexual intercourse or something uh with Cat Williams's character. But
Mhm.
Cat Williams didn't like that, and he changed the
Mhm.
script to that. Yep, that was what Terry's attempt will be. However, Cat Williams will use a wrench in the bathroom to attack Terry Crews and get away from the situation. Uh,
Mhm.
that's what Cat Williams end up adding into the movie, and that was also a funny scene as well. Um, so once he made that comment, Ice Cube, who was the writer of the movie, he wrote the movie. He also responded to Club Shay Shay interview, and he said there was never a rape scene ever imagined for that role. And he basically just said, I don't know why Kevin Hart, why Cat Williams said that. There was no such thing. I believe he's saying the wrong thing because in the same movie, at the start of the movie, there's clear indications that Terry Crews is he's just come out of jail, and
Yep.
he's definitely a homosexual. And there was also a scene where he was trying to, the way he was interacting with Ice Cube and forget the other gentleman's name. He's also a comedian. And the way he was interacting with them, it was clear that they play their cards wrong. He'll be going after them. So there's
Right.
already that
Okay.
indication they're already put in there, so they can't say that that's not what was in the plot. And I'm pretty sure Katt Williams said, "No, I'm not doing that. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm just going to change the thing a little bit," and he made it quite funny as well. But
Yeah.
I guess people just yeah, I mean, like people are aware that this is going to be he said versus I said,
Yeah.
and
There's going to be an amount of that.
you just have to be, I guess you have to be able to read between the lines to kind of
Mhm.
figure out who's speaking the truth here and who's
Mm.
using if he's going to say that about me and make me look like something, I'm just going to say, no, I didn't do that. That was never the plan.
Mm.
Who are they going to believe? I mean, like that sort of a thing is going on as well.
Also, when people are able to kind of articulate, like the gentleman that you said, well, why would they give me, 1,200 bucks or whatever, in a check? So that kind of thing, you know, at least there's a little bit of something backing it. You know what I mean? I turned up, wasn't let in, you know, and then they paid me money. Why would they do that? Otherwise,
Yeah.
so you can see that. Whereas an outright refusal, no, I don't know what he's talking about. Well, why would he create it out of whole cloth? There's likely to be a story there. Whether it be a misinterpretation,
Yeah.
whether or not it's a
Where there's smoke, there's
misunderstanding.
fire.
Yeah, there's a misunderstanding. There's a
Yeah.
communication error. There's a different in narrative, a different set of values as to different parts of it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, but to kind of denounce it whole cloth, you're basically saying, look, this guy, is mad. He's making things up for no reason. He's a psychopath. There's very few of them around.
Yeah. Exactly.
I would have an easier time thinking instead of, oh, this guy's a psychopath, saying this guy's got a big ego, or this guy is jealous, or this guy is, these kind of things. They're a lot easier to believe, or this guy's got completely the wrong end of the stick. I could see all of that, but to kind of say, okay, well, this guy's making stuff up completely off the top of his head, big elaborate, you know, stories about things, and he's now involved me for no apparent reason. You find it a lot hard to believe these kind of things, in my view.
Mm. Yeah, and what I guess one of the other things, one of the other people he went after that I am aware of is Steve Harvey,
Steve Harvey.
um, and Cedric the Entertainer.
Mm.
Um, I think it was just I think it was from the stand-up comics from that era.
Yeah,
Those
and Bernie was the other bloke.
No,
I think
he didn't
he
go
actually
after him.
only had good things to say
He
about
only had
Bernie.
good things to say about Bernie, and
Yeah.
Bernie, I forgot his surname. I think it was just known as Bernie. Um, Bernie Mac.
Bernie
But
Mac.
yeah, no, I think everyone always says great things about him, and it's not because
Mm.
he passed away, but he was just one of those people that
Mm.
was a juggernaut, like Dave Chappelle. Like he was
Mm.
too funny. He was just everything about him, from the way he looked, his eyes.
Mm.
He was just one of those guys that was just naturally incredibly funny for everyone. Like, as soon as
Mm.
he would rock up, you start laughing because there was something about him. It was just so funny. Um, but but a lot of people have said like this. You must have heard of Kings of Comedy. Uh,
Mm,
this was the thing about 15 or 20 years ago,
yeah.
where Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, Bernie Mac, and D.L. Hughley
Mm,
would be the four comics that would do concerts, fill out concerts all over America. And Bernie Mac would always be the end, he would always end the show because he was just the best.
mhm,
Steve Harvey would
mm,
always open the show. And I think a lot of people, including Steve Harvey, has mentioned that, my stand-up, I was never a great stand-up guy. Um, but yeah, like, going after Steve Harvey and just saying, oh, Steve Harvey stole my story. That I
mm,
was the one who was homeless, not Steve Harvey. That's what Katt Williams was saying.
mm,
Um, it's like there's a lot of people who are homeless who
mm,
they're trying to make it in the Hollywood, who are trying to make it in
mm.
the comedy space. There are a lot of people who are homeless. So, it's a big call to assume, number one, that his story is fake. And if it is fake, it's your story that he's stealing,
Yeah, and
not
I think
somebody else's.
that's more the case too. I think that you know, assuming that if someone says something that also aligns with you, you've got to claim it wholesale. That if someone has well, now jokes are one thing. If you come in and say, here's a joke, I'm going to steal that setup, steal that lead up, steal that punchline. You've effectively stolen that joke. That's plagiarism. That's theft. That's whatever. And we could get behind that. But saying, I went to school, I had a hard time. My dad was abusive. My mum, was had two jobs or whatever like that. You could put that same story
Yeah.
with a billion people. Um, to say, okay, so and so's had this kind of a situation, therefore, you know, or I've had this kind of a situation, therefore that person can't have.
Because most people, yeah, because most people have left their homes to go to Hollywood, and they're not going to
Mm,
be living in a five-star accommodation
no,
as probably 18, 19-year-olds, or even in their early 20s or mid 20s. They're going to
mm,
be, just scraping through. And Joe Rogan is another example of that.
yeah,
Like they were just barely making ends meet, if at all. Uh,
mm,
and yeah, so that's a very common story. And to say that, no, this is my
absolutely,
story that's been stolen, I think, nah, buddy, come on. And
yeah, and
yeah,
you're right, and it's the fact that someone has associated with someone else in some way doesn't mean that your experiences rub off on them, and that you're simply projecting their situations, or
yeah,
that they would go look at you and go, "Hey, he's really, really interesting. His life, his experiences are really, really interesting. I'm
yeah.
going to use them in my set." I don't see that happening. You'd have to come at me with something a lot more specific than he had a hard time or a difficult time before he became rich and famous. That could quite easily be any of us.
Yeah.
Um,
And with Steve Harvey, you know, I guess no one. I mean, he was he had a little period where I thought he wasn't a bad comedian.
mhm,
I've seen some of his stand up, and it's not that bad. Yeah, but he
mhm.
was not at the same level as a Bernie,
No, Bernie Mac.
as a D.L. Hughley, as a Chris Rock, and you can forget about Dave
Mhm,
Chappelle. It's a whole different stratosphere. But Steve Harvey has always been funny as a Family Feud.
Family Feud, he
Host.
does all right. I
He
like him on
does,
there.
yeah. He's just got that timing on how to talk to people. He has got that body language. He's got the southern draw. It's just
Mm,
everything. It just works perfectly, and he's just and he's made his whatever I guess you call it a character or whatever it is, he's made it a one-on-one, and he's just his
mm,
swagger and everything. Just people just love him, and he's
mm,
genuinely funny in that space. And like to say that comedy is just stand-up comedy is also wrong. You can be funny
mm.
in many different ways. Just because you're not a funny as a stand-up comic doesn't mean you're not a funny actor.
Well, Ryan
Take Will
Reynolds.
Ferrell. Take Will Ferrell for instance.
Mm,
You know what I mean? What an amazing actor.
mm,
Never done stand-up. He did a little stint where he was trying to be George Bush, and he was touring around the country as George Bush.
mm,
But that's just again him doing an act, him
mm.
acting like he does in movies, and it's just
Ryan Reynolds is an example of someone who's really good as a comedic actor, but
yeah.
I don't know that he's ever done any stand-up.
No, I don't think so.
Mm,
And everyone who's ever worked with Will Ferrell will say
mm,
he's a riot, and these are stand-up comedians who have had the chance to work in a movie with Will Ferrell, and Kevin Hart attests to that. He said, "I've worked with Will Ferrell in a movie," and he said when he's in a movie, everything is a bit. Everything like
mm,
whatever he's doing is a bit, and you just have to figure it out. He can catch you unaware, thinking that he's
mm,
genuine, but he's just in the character, and he continues
mm,
to be in the character. He's just an extremely funny guy, extremely.
mm,
Um, and he's never done any stand up, and you don't have to only do stand up to be funny. And
mm.
sometimes a person who's good at stand up is not necessarily a funny actor. And
No.
Chris Rock is in that sort of
Mm.
conversation. Amazing comedian. His
Oh, yeah.
acting
Brilliant.
is not a funny actor at all. Is
Mm,
it doesn't translate very well. So there's not a lot of people who can do both
mm,
incredibly well. And that's why they're greats. Even Dave Chappelle. I don't see him as a great actor.
no.
He's done a movie with Tom Hanks, Sleepless in
Mm,
Seattle, and
mm.
he's not wasn't that funny.
He was in Con Air
Movie.
too.
He's done it. Yeah, he was in. He's done a couple of movies with Martin Lawrence as well,
Mhm,
and he was okay. It wasn't that guy. He's done a movie with Eddie Murphy as well, Nutty Professor. He wasn't.
mm,
It was okay. But some people can do everything, and Eddie Murphy is also one of those people who can do anything, can do whatever he wants.
mm,
He's just one of those people. He's great at stand up, great at acting, great at
mm,
interviews. Just a funny guy.
mm.
Just a funny guy.
Oh, yeah. A lot of
But
time for him.
yeah, and so I mean, going back to Steve Harvey, he's an icon, and I think in a lot of ways he's untouchable.
Mm.
I don't even know if he has responded to any of the stuff that uh,
I
he.
don't think he'd need to. I think that Katt Williams, a lot of what I got from that interview was him basically saying, I am at that stratosphere, I'm right up there, I've been around forever,
Yeah.
kudos to me, you know, these these people, Steve Harvey and Cedric the Entertainer, they really weren't much, Kevin Hart's not much, I'm pretty bloody good, you
Mhm.
know. I'm better than them. And for these particular reasons, they fall short because of these reasons, and I don't suffer from those same shortcomings. I've been in the business forever. I still sell out. I still do this. I still do that. Pat myself on the back. Um, and maybe that's an amount of him realizing he's been in the game for 35 years. Where is where's his legacy? Is he earning as much as Steve Harvey? Is
Mm.
he has he achieved as much as Steve Harvey? Um, even if he can sell out, um, does he have the same personal net wealth? Does he have the same life? Does he have the same trappings? Probably not.
Mm.
Does he have the same trappings as Kevin Hart, and same wealth and credibility and respect of Kevin Hart? Probably not. I mean, he tells us he does. He tells us that when he walks in the room, all these guys kind of bow down at him and that kind of thing. Is that true?
Well,
Probably
I think
not.
I think that yeah, I think that was an indication of he knows a lot of secrets about. I know a lot of secrets about you, and you.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's what he was referring to when he said, when I walk into a
Mm,
room, people look down because they say, I know a shit about
mm,
all of you guys. Like, I think that's where he was, what he
mm,
was alluding to when he mentioned that. Um, yeah, look, I mean, I have seen some of his recent stand-up before this interview.
mm,
I really enjoyed it so much. Like
mm,
when I go back to his stand-ups acts from almost 20 years ago, they were a lot
mm,
funnier to me
mm,
than what he's churning out now. And,
mm,
I don't know if this was him being a very good publicist, if this is his way of becoming relevant again, and him
oh
realizing,
well, gee, hasn't it though?
yeah, like I'm not really getting much traction on Netflix while they're still allowing me to put my specials on there. Um, you know,
Mm,
th- there are some statistics that we as viewers do not get, but them
mm,
as participants in Netflix, they must get a lot of stats and everything on what's the viewership, how many views have happened, and what each comedian is getting for
mm,
the Netflix special from Netflix and all that sort of thing. So Cat William must be seeing that he's not pulling as he was as the Cat Williams of the old. And this must be a way for him to, I guess, kick the dust again on some of the controversies that he's mentioned previously. Because, like I said, Kevin Hart, the thing wasn't for the first time, but he's
mm,
gone after a few more people, or a few more things that he has heard in other interviews from those people, and he's gone after them. Um, and it just seems to be aligned with, I'm not sure if he's got a tour coming up, but if he's doing a tour, and if he's coming to Sydney, I'll want to go and see him now.
mm.
I
Oh
probably,
yeah.
I can tell you, I would not have gone if it weren't for this. I would have thought of him
Mm,
as, oh, he's just a washed-up comedian now, and people are just
mm,
going there because they're fans of his work and they just want to see him live. They don't care how
mm,
good his work is; they just want to see him live, and it could be just one of those things like the greatest hits tour.
mm,
I mean, like sort of thing. And but now, if he's coming, I'll definitely want to go because I'm hoping he's gonna say some things because you know how these days I'm not sure if you've been to a comedy concert lately of one of these big celebrities. They take your phones away. They take your phone away and they put them in a coded bag which you
mm.
cannot open. Uh, they
Oh,
have
fair enough.
they have a special thing like they do at the in the shops where they take the tags off. It's like something
Mm,
like that they do to take the tag off, and then you can take your phone out, so that people
mm.
cannot record
Fair.
what's being said. So if Cat Williams is coming down, I would be so keen to go and see if he says things that he knows is not going to leave the room or the concert hall because no one's got their phones. Uh,
Well, it would be the same kind of situation, I would be guessing. It's like when Chris Rock, when everyone was waiting on Chris Rock to say something about Will
yeah.
Smith, you know what I mean? It's that controversy was already inbuilt.
My God.
Oh, that's a train wreck there. That's
Oh,
the whole
oh,
story.
that's a whole story. Let's add Will Smith to
Oh,
the topic because that topic doesn't seem to be dying at all.
oh no.
But
God, you wouldn't be Will Smith for quids, would you?
no. And I guess, and one of the other people he went after was Cedric the Entertainer. And
Mhm,
I thought that was a fair game because his claim was that Cedric the Entertainer stole his joke.
mm,
He just added a few words and changed a couple of words here and there, but he pretty,
mhm,
pretty much stole his joke. So, and the records show that Katt Williams did. I don't know. I can't remember what the joke was exactly, but
Yeah,
Katt Williams actually.
something sitting
Sorry?
down and doing a driving along and whatever, in the whole thing, driving along, sitting on a chair, and I think
The car
Cedric the
broke down or
Entertainer,
something.
yeah, I think he instead of driving along, he was flying a plane or spaceship or something like that. So, and then the same kind of thing there. So yeah, it's a joke still. It's plagiarism.
Exactly. So that bit made sense to me. Um, but yeah, look, all in
Probably a
all,
little bit, a little bit of A and a little bit of B. I think with everything that
yeah.
comes here. I think.
Look, I don't doubt that he's an intellectual, no doubt about it, and his
Mm,
comedy shows that. It's just that the extent of what he's claiming and what he has produced in terms of
mm,
material doesn't add up. Like,
mm,
a person who's reading 3,000 books a year is not just doing comedy specials.
mm,
If he was like one of the biggest pastors in America as a result of all his
mhm,
knowledge, as a result, and because there's also claims that he's changed many religions. And his reason to do that was he wanted to immerse himself in the religion that he's trying to learn about. And he felt that the
mm,
only way to immerse yourself is not just through books, you have to actually convert and experience. So he did a lot of that. So, I mean, you expect someone who's so well read to have had a bigger impact
mm,
on people. And I just don't see that. Like there's been many comedians who have had similar impacts on people that he has had.
mm,
Um, and he's not, to me, he's not the greatest ever. He's a
mm,
very funny guy, uh,
mm.
very funny comedian, very intellectual, and he's got good life lessons. He's got good wisdom about him as well.